What if I told you that the physical shape of a winding river, like the way the water actually flows, the stability of its banks, even the path it carves through a whole valley? What if I told you that depends entirely on the sharp teeth of a wolf?
I mean, it sounds completely counterintuitive.
Right.
When you look at a river, you think of geology or, rainfall, erosion.
Right, yeah.
You certainly don't look at water currents and think of an apex predator.
But that is exactly the paradigm shift we are unpacking today. Welcome to the deep dive. We're getting into the reality of the gray wolf today, moving past all the folklore and the scary fairy tales.
Yeah, exactly.
And what we find in our source material today, this fascinating text called The Gray Wolf, Nature's Silent Guardian, is that this animal doesn't just survive in the wilderness. It actually engineers it.
It does.
The mission of this deep dive is to explore how this animal is way more than just a predator. It's really the most intelligent and disciplined creature out there. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah. And what's fascinating here is that this requires a total rewrite of how we understand predator dynamics. Because, the traditional narrative of the wilderness is very binary.
Right, strong and weak.
Exactly. The strong and the weak. The hunter and the hunted. It's always painted as this chaotic, unthinking brutality, usually dominated by whichever animal has the biggest claws or the strongest jaws.
Right, you think of a cheetah, right? Which is essentially a biological missile.
A biological missile, I like that.
Yeah, it relies entirely on stealth, followed by this massive, blinding sprint. I mean, it basically has one play in the playbook, run incredibly fast for about 30 seconds.
Right, it's highly specialized. But it's also entirely predictable. Like if a cheetah doesn't catch its prey within that really brief window, the hunt is over.
Just gives up.
Yeah, the cheetah overheats, the tension breaks, and the prey survives. But the gray wolf operates on an entirely different evolutionary principle. They don't rely on a quick sprint at all. They rely on persistence hunting.
And this is where the biology gets just so fascinating to me, because persistence hunting isn't just about trying really hard. It's a specific, physiological adaptation.
Oh, absolutely.
A gray wolf can trot continuously for hours. They cover tens of miles in a single day. But we usually think of predators relying entirely on stealth or a quick sprint, like you said.
Right.
But changing the playbook every single time and running a marathon to literally tire the prey out, that requires profound discipline. How does that stamina fundamentally change the power dynamic of a hunt?
Well, it comes down to thermal regulation and just structural efficiency. Wolves have this incredibly complex network of blood vessels in their nasal passages.
Oh, wait, in their noses.
Yeah, in their noses. And it actually cools the blood before it reaches the brain. It acts almost like a biological radiator.
Oh, wow.
Add to that their lung capacity, which is massive relative to their body size, allowing for rapid oxygen exchange. And their paws are remarkably large, with slight webbing between the toes.
Wait, webbing? So they essentially have built-in snowshoes.
Exactly. While a heavy hooved animal, like a moose or an elk, is sinking deep into the snow with every single step.
Just exhausting itself.
Right, expending massive amounts of energy and overheating. The wolf is distributing its weight and just gliding over the surface.
Yeah.
They're physically designed to exhaust their prey before they themselves ever get tired.
That dramatically changes the psychological dynamic of a hunt, doesn't it? Like if you're a deer and a predator relies on a short sprint, you just have to survive for a minute.
You just hold on for 60 seconds.
Right. If you get away, you can rest. But a wolf, because of that marathon stamina, the prey realizes very quickly that this threat is not going away. It's an inevitable force.
It is. And you have to pair that relentless endurance with their sensory biology. They don't just smell things from far away. A wolf's olfactory bulb, the part of the brain dedicated to processing smells, is huge.
It's just massive.
Yeah. They're literally reading a chemical map of the landscape. They can detect the scent of prey from kilometers away, not just a few hundred yards.
And they can pinpoint sounds under the snow, right? Because I read in the source text that they can hear the low-frequency shuffling of tiny animals deep beneath the powder.
They can, yeah. Their ears act like parabolic reflectors. They independently pivot to triangulate the exact location of a sound under like 3 feet of snow.
That is wild.
So put yourself in the position of the prey. You can't outrun them because their stamina is limitless. You can't outlast them because their bodies dissipate heat better than yours. And you absolutely cannot hide from them because they can hear your heartbeat under a snowdrift.
It's terrifying. But I mean, from an analytical standpoint, it's a masterpiece of evolution, like a chess grandmaster or an elite sports team.
A very deadly sports team.
Oh, right. But here's the thing. Stamina and senses are great, but they don't explain the intelligence. A wolf can run forever, but a single wolf still can't pull down a healthy 2,000-pound bison.
No, definitely not.
The physics just don't add up. A kick from a bison can crush a skull. So stamina alone isn't enough to secure a meal of that size.
Which brings us to the core of the wolf's identity. The lone wolf is a complete myth.
Right, it's just a trope.
Exactly. The fundamental unit of survival is the pack.
Yeah.
And when they hunt these massive animals, they don't just swarm it chaotically. They formulate distinct strategies for every single hunt, constantly changing their methods so prey cannot learn their patterns.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Let's break down the mechanics of that. Because think about the level of communication required to surround a massive animal without a single word.
Oh, it's incredibly complex.
Right, because if they're constantly shifting the playbook, how do they actually coordinate an ambush without sound? If they start howling or barking, they give away the element of surprise.
They rely on subtle, almost imperceptible physical cues. It's akin to how a flock of starlings moves in a murmuration, or, how dancers read body tension.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, a wolf will shift its ear positioning, or alter the angle of its tail, or make direct eye contact to signal a change in formation.
So they are silently orchestrating this dynamic geometry. It's like a military pincer movement. A few wolves will attack from the front to deliberately draw the bison's attention.
Right, absorb its defensive energy.
Yeah, and meanwhile, others are already circling around the flanks to block the escape route from behind.
Yes. They break down a massive, highly dangerous problem into manageable pieces through pure tactical collaboration. They analyze the terrain, they push the prey into deep snow or onto slippery ice.
Where the hooves lose traction.
Exactly. Where hooves lose traction, but their webbed paws hold firm, and they systematically dismantle the target's defenses.
But I want to introduce a bit of friction here regarding pack dynamics, because there's a beautiful contradiction here. We often hear about how fiercely devoted they are as caretakers.
They are, yeah.
Like, they never abandon their cubs, and if a member is injured, the entire pack rallies to protect them. People love to frame this as unbreakable loyalty or deep empathy. But aren't we just anthropomorphizing them a bit?
How do you mean?
Well, calling it empathy feels like projecting human emotions onto a biological machine. Isn't keeping the pack alive just a cold biological calculus for survival?
That's a completely fair challenge, and you have to strip away the romanticism to see the reality. Is it human empathy? Probably not in the way we define it.
Right.
But it is a profound level of social cohesion that serves a biological imperative.
Right.
Think about the complexity of the hunt we just discussed. When your survival strategy requires coordinated, silent flanking maneuvers.
You need every team member.
Exactly. Every member of that pack is a highly trained specialist. If a wolf is injured and the pack abandons them, the entire unit loses a crucial tactical piece.
Oh, I hadn't thought about it like that. So a skilled hunter is an asset you don't just discard.
Precisely. They lose numbers, they lose experience, and they lose the geometry of their hunt. Protecting an injured wolf isn't just some sentimental act, it is resource management. Preserving a pack member preserves the unit's ability to take down massive prey in the future.
Wow. So the deep social bond is an evolutionary survival tool.
It really is. The pack's survival depends entirely on keeping its members alive. So protecting an injured wolf is just as critical to their success as taking down a massive meal.
That makes perfect sense. The ruthless efficiency of the hunt is only made possible by the intense protective cohesion of the pack. They are two sides of the same coin.
Right.
So they aren't just a group of killers, they are a highly interdependent unit relying on each other for their very existence.
And that interdependence doesn't just stop at the edge of the pack. This is where we transition from observing the wolf as an individual animal to understanding the wolf as a fundamental force of nature within its broader environment.
Which brings us to the concept of the wolf as the doctor of the forest. I have to admit, seeing a predator with razor-sharp teeth described as a physician feels a bit jarring.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah. But it all comes down to their selection process, doesn't it? They specifically target and hunt weak and sick animals.
They do. And again, we have to look at the calorie economics of this. Hunting a healthy prime-aged elk requires significantly more energy and carries a much higher risk of injury.
Right, and an injury is bad news.
The broken rib for a wild wolf is often a death sentence. By utilizing those hyper-tuned senses we talked about, reading the subtle gait anomalies, smelling the chemical signatures of disease, they can identify the most vulnerable target in a herd of hundreds.
So they maximize their caloric intake while minimizing their physical risk.
Precisely. And in doing so, they inadvertently perform this massive public health service for the ecosystem. By constantly culling the diseased, the injured, and the genetically weak individuals, they prevent pathogens from spreading rapidly through massive herds of grazing animals.
It's basically the immune system of the forest. The wolves hunting the sick animals act exactly like white blood cells attacking a virus to save the host body.
That is a fantastic analogy.
Thanks. By removing the diseased individuals, the herd as a whole actually gets stronger and more resilient.
It does. And it completely flips the script on the historical narrative. Instead of the wolf being a plague upon the wilderness, their presence is the very thing preventing diseases like chronic wasting disease from decimating ungulate populations.
And despite their danger, they are generally peaceful toward humans. Right?
Oh yeah, they generally stay away from humans. They do not attack without provocation. They are just out there doing their job, keeping the biological machinery running smoothly.
But the ripple effect gets even bigger, and this is where we circle back to the hook about the winding rivers. So what does this all mean? How does a wolf eating a sick animal somehow keep a river safe?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture.
Let's really break down the mechanics of this, because I think it's the most mind-blowing aspect of the deep dive. The idea that this predator acts as the ultimate balancer of an ecosystem.
Yeah, in ecology, this mechanism is called a trophic cascade. It's an ecological process that starts in the top of the food chain and tumbles all the way down to the bottom.
Right.
And we don't have to guess how this works. We have real-world data from places like Yellowstone National Park.
Right, where wolves were absent for decades and then reintroduced.
Exactly.
So paint the picture for us. What does the landscape look like before the wolves are there?
Without wolves, the population of grazing animals like deer and elk, it just explodes. Because there is no apex predator to keep their numbers in check, they multiply rapidly. But it's not just the sheer numbers, it's their behavior.
They get comfortable.
Extremely comfortable. They become sedentary. They congregate in the safest, most accessible places, which are usually the valleys and the riverbank.
Just hanging out by the water.
Right. And they just stand there day after day, eating everything in sight. They overgraze. They strip the willow and aspen saplings down to the nubs.
Yeah.
They eat the ground cover. The landscape becomes completely barren.
Which means the soil is totally exposed.
Yes. And without the deep, complex root systems of those trees and bushes to anchor the soil, the riverbanks lose their structural integrity. When the spring melts come or heavy rains hit, the banks just wash away.
Wow.
The rivers widen, they become shallow, the water gets muddy, and the entire aquatic ecosystem degrades.
Okay, so the system is essentially collapsing under the weight of unchecked grazing. Then the wolves are introduced. What is the immediate mechanism of change? Do they just eat all the deer?
They eat some, which stabilizes the population numbers, but the true mechanism of change is psychological. It introduces what ecologists call the ecology of fear.
The ecology of fear. So because the wolves are constantly hunting, constantly changing their tactics, and possessing limitless stamina, the deer can no longer afford to be sedentary.
Exactly. The deer are forced to keep moving. They can no longer casually stand by the riverbank stripping saplings bare because they are sitting ducks for a wolf pack in that open terrain.
That makes total sense.
The fear of the wolf forces the deer to move to higher ground, into more heavily timbered areas, and to constantly migrate.
And the moment the deer abandon the riverbanks, the vegetation gets a break.
The vegetation explodes. Within just a few years of wolves returning to an area, the willow and aspen saplings shoot up. The barren valleys transform into lush forests. And when those trees grow, their root systems dive deep into the earth.
I see where this is going.
Yeah, those roots weave into a dense underground net that physically locks the soil in place.
So the riverbanks literally solidify.
Yes. The erosion halts. The rivers narrow, they become deeper, and the water flows faster and cooler. The physical geography of the river changes entirely because the roots are holding the banks firm.
That is just incredible. The wolf hunts the deer, the ecology of fear moves the deer away from the water, the trees finally grow, the roots lock the dirt, and the river is saved. But it doesn't stop there, does it?
Not at all.
Because once the trees come back, a whole new wave of life must follow.
The cascade continues. With the trees back, the songbirds return to the canopy. With the willows thriving along the banks, the beavers who rely on those specific trees return to the rivers.
And beavers are ecosystem engineers in their own right.
Exactly. They build dams, which create deep, cold pools of water that are perfect habitats for fish, amphibians, and reptiles.
It is an unbelievably intricate web, and it fundamentally challenges how we evaluate nature. When we look at an ecosystem, it is so easy to romanticize it.
But we do it all the time.
Right. We want to look at the gentle deer grazing by a serene river and think, oh, that is the ideal state of nature. We look at a predator with blood on its teeth and view it as a horrific disruption to that peace.
But the reality of the science tells us the exact opposite. This raises an important question about how we view nature. The most dangerous element is actually the glue holding the peaceful elements together.
Wow.
Without the disciplined, tactical, and relentless pressure applied by the wolf pack, the herbivores strip the land bare, the soil erodes, the rivers collapse, and the entire system spirals into ruin.
The disruption is the regulation. That is profound. It totally validates the idea that the wolf isn't just a resident of the wilderness. To quote the source text directly, the wolf doesn't just live in the jungle stays alive because of the wolf.
It encapsulates the entire shift in perspective. You go from seeing the wolf as a villainous monster lurking in the shadows to understanding it as the keystone architect of the ecosystem.
And I think for you listening, this totally transforms how you walk through the world. We started this deep dive with the preconceived notion of a feared, brute force predator. But by actually looking at the biology and the ecology, we've uncovered a highly evolved mastermind.
A persistence hunter that uses thermal regulation and geometry to outplan its prey.
Exactly. We found a fiercely cooperative unit that leverages social cohesion and tactical empathy as supreme survival tools. And ultimately, we discovered a vital ecological doctor, the silent guardian that physically shapes the rivers simply by existing.
It's a powerful reminder that our initial judgments, especially those based on fear, folklore, or surface-level observation, almost always blind us to the complex realities of how interconnected systems actually function.
Such a great point.
Which leaves us with a compelling thought to mull over long after this deep dive ends.
What's that?
Well, if the gray wolf, an animal that has been historically vilified, hunted to near extinction, and almost universally misunderstood as a destructive force, is actually the silent guardian keeping the rivers flowing and the forest thriving simply by doing its job.
Right.
What other misunderstood villains might be out there?
Oh, that's interesting. Taking the ecological principle and applying it outward.
Exactly. Think about human systems in our daily lives, in our workplaces, or even in our broader societies. What forces, ideas, or even people do we quickly label as disruptive, dangerous, or abrasive?
You usually just want to get rid of them.
Right, we often rush to eliminate the things that cause friction. But in reality, some of those very elements might actually be the unseen guardians applying the necessary pressure to prevent those systems from collapsing into complacency and ruin.
That is a fascinating question to chew on. Something to definitely consider the next time you are quick to judge the so-called villain in the room, or the friction in your life. Unseen guardians take many forms. We will see you on the next deep dive.